This is the Instax SQ40, soon to celebrate its first birthday. It is an instant film camera manufactured by Fujifilm that does not take Instax mini film. It doesn't take these, don't look at these. This takes square film, which are these beautiful specimens right here. I love the square format. I think it looks so good. Having greater surface area in each image allows for more detail, higher fidelity images, and different opportunities for composition. I take a lot of Instax mini shots. This wall is significantly bigger than what you usually see in frame. So having the same technology, but a whole new way of using it with this film size and format is pretty exciting for me. In this video, I'm gonna go over the specs of the camera. I'll explain what I like most and least about it, and then I'll talk about my experiences shooting with it, what I tried, what worked, what didn't, as well as some interesting tidbits and general information about the technology. I really put this thing through the paces. I tried it in a variety of different lighting conditions and shooting setups. I pushed it to the very limit of its ability, so I'm excited to share my findings with you here. Before I jump in and talk about the specs, I do want to thank Fujifilm Instax for sending me this little baby to test out. They sent me the SQ40 and a pack of square film, so thank you so much to Fujifilm. This was very exciting. I've been posting a lot about the SQ40 on Instagram, so if you haven't seen my Instax Instagram content, do go check it out. That said, I am under no obligation to give a positive review, and I've made this review as robust and honest as possible. There are some things that I really love about this camera, and there are some things that I really don't, and I'm going to be honest and upfront with you about what those things are and why. So, with all that said, and without further ado, let's jump right in and talk about specs. This is a fully analog instant camera. It is not a Polaroid. Stop calling it a Polaroid. Unlike the Instax Mini Evo, which is my other lover, this camera uses the same snap, roll, and print technology as the majority of the Instax camera line. Here is a short of me explaining how that works. It takes Instax square film, which costs about $17 Canadian per pack of 10, so $1.70 per print. Compare that to the Instax Mini, which costs $14-ish Canadian per pack of 10 or $1.40 per print. So the square film is not that much more expensive than the Instax Mini film, and you do get a lot more real estate in the frame. That said, you cannot buy the square film in bulk, which is really too bad because I stock my fridge with those bulk packs like twice a year. The square format has been around since 2017, much to the chagrin of Polaroid, which was when the SQ1 was first launched. Since the SQ1, we've had the SQ6, SQ10, and SQ20, which all improved or iterated on the design with different sensors, modes, shutter options, etc. But here, SQ40 is a return to simpler times. It is a slightly heavier, sleeker version of the original SQ1, similar to how the Instax Mini 40 is a redesign of the original Instax Mini. Essentially, these are basic cameras with an updated design and professional looking finish. I do love the way that this thing looks. Y'all know I'm a fashion enthusiast and this looks great with any outfit. I love people seeing my outfit and saying, "Wow, are you a photographer?" And I say, "Yes, how did you know?" And they say, "Your camera looks so good. Is it a Polaroid?" And I say, "No, stop calling it a Polaroid." This camera is great for people who do not want to think about settings. It is a point and shoot, which is very liberating for photographers who feel bogged down by too many options and elements to consider while shooting. It has auto exposure, so the camera decides how bright a photo is going to be, and that's what you get. It has two focal modes, regular and selfie, and you can toggle between the modes by turning this lens, which is also how you turn it on and off. Side note, it has a little set of doors that open and close when you twist the lens, and this is good design, okay? I didn't mention this in my Instax Evo video because it wasn't a problem yet, but shortly after making that video, the exposed lens of the Evo became scratched after a particularly long period of being smushed at the bottom of my camera bag. And now every photo I take on it has this blooming effect because of the scratches. It's kind of a vibe sometimes, but not all the time, and it's certainly not ideal. So I am very happy that the SQ40 will not have this problem because it has a way to cover the lens. Anyway, focal modes. I wasn't very interested in selfie mode at first because I am too pale to take a selfie at arm's length with flash. I'm just gonna be pupils and nostrils. Until I heard someone online refer to it as macro mode, and I was like, macro mode? Oh, macro mode. This mode is so much better for close range shots. Anything 30 to 50 centimeters away. If you're a recovering Tumblr girl like I am, you may be tempted to take Instax photos of every flower you see. Well, you can do yourself a favor for that and use the selfie mode, and they won't turn out blurry. You will have to remember to cover the flash a lot. This camera has an automatically firing flash, which means the camera just decides when it's time, and it is hard to remember that sometimes. I ruined a lot of photos by forgetting to cover the flash. If you're shooting anything up close, outside, or anything in daylight, really, just do yourself a favor and block the flash. A good thing to keep in mind too is that all Instax film is 800 ISO, which is on the higher end of light sensitivity for color film, so you definitely don't need the flash as often as the flash wants to fire. If you're outside during the day, even if it's cloudy out, you will be okay without the flash. Speaking of daylight though, this is liable to overexpose in bright situations. The maximum shutter speed is 1/400th of a second, and the aperture is fixed at f12.6. So 800 ISO at 1/400th of a second and f12.6, that will be washed out in some daylight conditions. And because the aperture and ISO are both fixed, in low light conditions, the only mechanism that the camera has to compensate for the exposure is shutter speed, which can result in some very low shutter speeds. It goes as low as 1/2 second, which will produce blur or shutter drag when the flash goes off. This may be seen as a negative by some, and in some cases it certainly is, but personally, I was thrilled to discover that you could make intentionally blurry photos with this. And no, I'm not being ironic or something. I am legitimately stoked about it, and I will explain why in the next section when I talk about my experiences. But first, I'm gonna tell you the absolute worst thing about this camera. This feature is so bad that I actually laughed out loud when I opened the box and I discovered that this is powered by 2 CR2 lithium-ion batteries. What are those, you might ask? I've never heard of those. No, me neither. It couldn't be AA's, couldn't be AAA's, couldn't be rechargeable with a USB-C cable. No, it had to be the most obscure, expensive, hard-to-find battery they could possibly imagine. They are not rechargeable, and they cost, just think in your mind, what an unreasonable amount for a single battery to cost would be, and then just double it. They cost $25 each. So to replace the 2 batteries in this camera, you could pay up to 50 Canadian dollars. The camera sells for 170 Canadian dollars. So that's like 30% of the value of the camera is just the batteries, which are not rechargeable. What are we doing? What's the deal? Who designed this? Who approved this? For what reason? Why? Like, why? Somebody tell me why? Why? Apparently these batteries are good for up to 30 cartridges of film, which is around 300 photos. That sounds like a lot, but if you're a heavy user, like I am, that battery life is gonna fly right by. Don't leave your camera on in your bag by accident, folks, because you are gonna pay for that mistake. You're gonna pay 50 Canadian dollars. Actually, speaking of that, the camera does have a little flashing light that goes off when you leave it on by accident. So that's nice. At least if you see the light, you can know. But seriously, I don't know why this is a thing. I do know why it's a thing, actually. It's because the Instax SQ40 is a directly updated version of the SQ1, which had the same batteries. So there was no internal redesign whatsoever. I think this would have been a great opportunity to redesign one particular component and perhaps to make the flash possible to turn off, but they didn't take that opportunity. And it kind of reminds me, honestly, of how Nintendo, this is gonna be really obscure, I'm sorry, but when the Pokemon Diamond and Pearl remakes came out, they were such one-to-one remodels of the original that the programmers had left in bugs that the original games had because they just reskinned the game. They didn't actually change the game. And that's basically what's been done with the SQ40. But that said, I don't even know why the SQ1 had these, because it came out in 2017, and as I recall, we had AA batteries in 2017. Even my prehistoric Instax Mini takes AA's. So, I'm at a loss, man. Anyway, to round out this section with a nice little compliment sandwich, the hand feel of this camera is exceptional. It is slightly heavier than the original SQ1. It's better than the Instax Mini Evo in that regard, which feels a bit light, it kind of bangs around a bit. The Spartan features mean less moving parts and less opportunity for something to come loose and break. Overall, I feel really confident throwing this in the bottom of my bag after making sure it's off and bringing it around with me without worrying about its condition. It is sturdy, basic, and reliable. And I certainly had some fun shooting with it this spring, which brings me to my next section. Now that we've got all the specs talk out of the way, let's talk about my experience and results. So I got this camera in early March and I took it with me to San Francisco and Los Angeles, where I shot the majority of the street photos that you've seen in this video. I also took it on a few long bike rides around Vancouver, so there's some local scenery. I shot it at a few parties and events and tested its capabilities in studio. I am most excited to talk about the studio shots, so I will save those till the end. And I have the least to say about the street shots, so we'll talk about those first. First off, look how cool these shots are. fantastic photographer, Yvonne Hansen, biking around the world, snapping pics. I love the sunset bordered film. Oh my god. I wish they would make a color range like this for the Instax Mini. For pretty much all of these shots, I covered the flash. I did try to get creative for a few and held a red gel over the flash, but I hate how most of these came out. This one is okay, but the rest no. I had my best results on sunny days with moments of cloud cover. So lots of light, blue sky, but no sun directly hitting the camera. Of course, I had my share of exposure issues, but it did do a good job metering the blue skies most of the time, which is really nice in sunny California. Do not stand in the sun and take a picture of a shady area. It won't work. You can stand in a shady area and take a picture of an area with mixed sun and shade. That will work sometimes. I took some shots of flowers and plants in macro mode with varying success. It is very difficult to center single subjects in the frame because the viewfinder and the lens are offset. So I wind up doing this a lot, which usually gets them as centered as possible. I lost about 2 frames per pack to exposure issues for outdoor shots, which is a pretty decent ratio. That said, I really struggled to get good photos inside that weren't taken in strict studio conditions. The first pack of film I shot, I dedicated to personal photos, so parties, friends, family portraits, etc. And I had really bad luck with those. I didn't really know how the metering worked yet, so I just made every mistake that I could. At least I can teach you what not to do. Something really important to note is that if you're in a dark environment and you're taking a photo of a group of people or something at the outskirts of the 2.2 meter flash range, the flash will not light the people up. To be honest, if you're as wildly popular as I am and you're trying to squeeze all of your fabulous friends into one frame indoors at night, your photo is not gonna turn out. I remember one time I was at the launch party for my partner's game and it was this big pivotal moment and all of our friends were there, huge celebration, and I went around the party individually informing everybody of an imminent group photo. And eventually I had successfully bullied all 40 people to come into the living room and pose for this group photo. And because I am a dirty hipster recovering Tumblr girl, I decided to take it on my Instax Mini 8. And the flash did not reach the whole room. And the photo came out and it was just completely black, except for my little bright white face in the corner. And then I had to answer to 40 people about how the group photo turned out. Don't be like me, just take that photo on your phone. That is not what these cameras are for. Anyway, in studio, I got some fantastic results with this camera. Oh my god, I love it. I put effort into this, okay? I booked 6 mini sessions for a day, I bought 2 packs of film, and I did the most creative lighting techniques that I could possibly think of. Go and watch my creative lighting techniques video to see more info on those. Seriously, that video kind of flopped and I don't know why. But basically, once I discovered that this camera's shutter speed would go low enough to produce shutter drag, I was very curious to explore the possibilities. I set my strobes to slave, and it turns out the flash from the SQ40 is strong enough to trigger my strobes. And I can redirect it with my hand like this, so it doesn't hit the subject, but it still triggers the strobe. So to make these shots, I used 3 continuous LED panels, as well as an optical snoot over my strobe to direct the light. Since the shutter speed on this camera goes down to 1/2 second, you can get a decent shutter drag if you cover the light sensor with your fingers, because then it thinks it's super, super dark and it will lower the shutter speed to the maximum. For this shot, I mounted a wrinkled piece of cellophane around the lens and I lit it with a blue light. And for this one, I used a prism filter held in front of the lens. This one was a flashlight instead of a strobe held onto the face, and this one was a strobe with a gobo on it that projected a cool pattern. I am really happy with all of these shots. I had a lot of fun shooting with it in studio. It was kind of a fun challenge for me. I just made a day of taking the weirdest Instax square shots that I could. I also got this cute picture of Pikachu during this session. Isn't he cute? On a different day, I also tried with limited success to take some regular white light strobe shots in studio, but they were predictably overexposed. Not too bad, but too overexposed for my liking. I think if you're trying this, you might benefit from an ND filter, but make sure that it doesn't cover the light sensor as well, because that will affect your metering. And that's everything that I had to say about the Instax SQ40. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope this video was interesting. I hope it was helpful. I hope you benefit from my experience shooting with this camera and you're inspired to go and try it out for yourself. If you would like to support my channel, you can consider donating down below. There's a link to buy me a coffee. It is a one-time $5 donation. And at the moment, all of that money is going towards film and film development costs. So a huge thank you to anyone who has donated or anyone who is considering donating. I will be back next week with another video. That might be a lie. I'll probably be back in 2 weeks with another video, and it will probably be a video essay. You don't believe me. I know, it's fair if you don't believe me. There's 2 videos that are very exciting that I have in the works. One is a video essay, and the other is testing out 800 ISO films to see if they actually are just all portrait 800. Stay tuned for both of those coming up this month. In the meantime, I want you guys to stay sharp, and don't forget to keep shooting. Bye, guys.